Y'all, I don't even know what to say. I had to run out of the apartment. It was stuffy, it was hot in there. I needed to catch my breath, get some fresh air after that finish. Kentucky, of all places. Didn't expect that. Did not expect that. Kentucky. How's it going, everyone? My name is Eric and welcome to Out of the Groove. Let's talk about that incredible finish at Kentucky. We'll talk a little bit about the whole race. We're going to talk about the aero package because this is the first time we've seen it at Kentucky. We're going to talk about the top finishers in this race. I'll do a better job than I did after Daytona last week. You might notice I'm still not in my usual setup, and that is the case. I'm even using a slightly different camera than usual, so I apologize if the audio is not quite as good as what you guys have become used to. But we're going to talk about all these things and more in today's episode. I'll put this thing on the groovy gauge. There's just so much to react to. I didn't expect this from a Kentucky race. But here we go. Let's talk about Kentucky. Let's talk about the race as a whole. This race brought strategy back in the stage racing era. We haven't really seen strategy races as much, but this one, stage 1, stage 2, and especially stage 3, pit strategy, tire strategy really came into play. Even with this aero package. Kentucky is a pretty freshly repaved track, so that's not going to wear on the tires that much. This package doesn't produce a whole lot of tire wear either, but despite that, we still saw pretty significant tire strategy. Whether or not to take 0, 2, 4, left sides or right sides came into play pretty much at the end of every single stage, and for the finish of this race. The eventual winner of this race kind of went with tires. All race long, it looked like tires didn't matter, but the guy who ended up winning the race actually had slightly fresher tires than the other leaders he was racing against. So tire strategy was extremely interesting. That was one of the most interesting parts of this race because it was hard to pass. Kentucky has always been a tricky track to pass on. With this package, didn't seem like it was much or any easier. It still felt like it was about as hard to pass as it's ever been at Kentucky, so I can't say that it fixed that or helped that too much. So tire strategy and everything came into play a lot, and that's ultimately what shuffled the running order the most. We saw guys who were running up in the top 5 get put back to 10th or 15th, have to fight their way back through. That's how the running order kept getting mixed up, and that was really interesting because there was kind of like we've seen in a few races with this package this year. Throughout this race, I thought there were several different cars that maybe were the best in the field. At the very beginning, I thought maybe Suarez had the best in the field. He started on pole, led for a while. His teammates were close but couldn't quite get around him. Then I thought Joey Logano might have had the fastest car in the field. He ran so well at Michigan, I believe it was. It looked like it was going to maybe be a repeat of that. And then I thought Kyle Busch had the best car in the field. And then that final run, Logano again looked like he had the best car. But ultimately, none of those guys I just named ended up winning the race. So this one was wild, threw me for a loop continuously. But with that, I'll talk about the package and everything at the very end. With that, I do want to talk about the winner, and I want to talk about the finish, and I want to talk about the top finishers. Let's talk about that finish. So Joey Logano, Kyle Busch on 2 tires were battling for the win when the final 20-25 laps. Logano made the pass on Kyle Busch, eventually took the lead after other guys finished their pit stops when it cycled through. So Logano was leading, and he was pulling away. Logano had like a 2-second lead over Kyle Busch, and then with 6 laps to go, Bubba Wallace cuts down a right rear tire, spins out, and that brings out a caution, sets up an overtime 2-lap restart, and that's when things just got crazy. Final restart, Logano on the front row with Kyle Busch, and then Kurt Busch was lurking back there in 4th. Now Kurt Busch had slightly fresher tires. On the final stop, he took 4, Kyle Busch and Logano only took 2. So on that final restart, Kurt had slightly better tires. Tires didn't matter a whole lot in this race, but they might have mattered on this final restart. Restart happens. Logano had been better on the long runs all race long. He faded, could not hold his position. It turned into a 3-wide battle between the Busch brothers and Eric Jones. Eric Jones ducked out of it. It left it up to Kurt and Kyle to decide it on the final lap. They almost made contact. I think they did make a little bit of contact actually because Kurt Busch had some smoke coming out of his one of his left side tires coming to the checkered. And this is crazy because Kurt and Kyle Busch have been racing in NASCAR in the Cup Series full time since like 05. I mean, Kyle Busch has been here for a while. Kurt's a little older. They've both been racing for a long time. And yet we've never seen a classic real Kurt versus Kyle finish that I can remember, especially not one like this. But that's what it came down to. Side by side in 3 and 4, it looked like Kyle had the edge, but Kurt used that high side momentum to clear the 18 car out of turn 4 and win. It was great to see. I'm not a big Kurt Busch fan, but it was great to see him win. This is redemption from Daytona last week where he would have won that race, given the fact that it ended up being rain shortened and everything. He would have won that race if not for that rogue lightning strike there and on the 1 to go lap. So horrible luck cost Kurt Busch Busch a win at Daytona last week. He came out this week and completely earned it. He had one of the best cars in this race, easily a top 3 or 4 car, and on that final restart, he had the slightly fresher tires, and I think that's what really made the difference. Now let's go ahead and talk about the rest of the top finishers in this race. I'll try to keep this fairly quick, but yeah, Kurt Busch winning. He was already pretty much locked into the playoffs, given how consistent he'd been, but winning this race now gives him some much-needed playoff points. He also won stage 1, so 6 playoff points coming Kurt Busch's way. And boy, I know we talked about it a lot early in the season, how Kurt Busch was kind of the big underdog, surprise story of the year. Remember, that one car he's driving did not make the playoffs last year. Kurt Busch has come in here and not just turned him into a top 5 threat every single week, but he now has a win. Remember, he also almost won at Bristol earlier this year, finished second to Kyle in that race, got the better of him here tonight. So Kurt Busch has done wonders for Chip Ganassi Racing. I really thought he'd just do wonders for Kyle Larson, but no, he's just making himself look great in that one car, and it's awesome to see a veteran like that who's had such an up and down career really turn a whole program around, because that one car was not good last year or the year before. Really, one car has not been good in a while. He's making it look amazing, and so he gets the win, big for him. Kyle Busch finishes second. In stage 2, he actually won stage 2. He was able to drive up to the leaders, past a couple cars leading this race, made it look easy. I thought Kyle Busch has probably got the best car in this race. I thought it was over, but no, Logano made improvements, and then obviously Kurt with the tires at the end there got an advantage over him. But Kyle Busch, again, this is his best race I've seen though with on the mile and a half this year. With this new package, it's thrown everyone for a loop. You look at all of Kyle Busch's wins. They've come at the bigger tracks and the smaller tracks. These intermediate 1.5 milers have not been Kyle Busch's strong suit this year, but today at Kentucky turned that around a little bit. So even though he didn't win, still a good day, an encouraging day for Kyle Busch going into the playoffs. Because remember, at Homestead, the final race this year where we expect Kyle Busch to contend for a championship, it's a mile and a half. So it's nice to see the 18 maybe figure out this the intermediates a little bit more. Erik Jones, a strong third, a big points day for him. He also was second in stage 2. That helps actually vault him back into the top 16 in points at the end of today. So big day for Erik Jones, trying to make the playoffs in that 20 car. Kyle Larson snuck in there and ended up finishing 4th. So if we look at Chip Ganassi Racing, both their cars in the top 5, huge day for Chip Ganassi. Kyle Larson, again, he's in the playoffs right now pretty comfortably, and a 4th place finish is going to help that. Denny Hamlin, strong 5th. Clint Bowyer ends up finishing 6th. I'll talk about a controversy involving Bowyer here in a moment, but Clint Bowyer finishing 6th, that's the highest finishing Stewart-Haas racing car, you can see right there, and that's surprising. Early on in this race, they were the top 3. You had Suarez up there, Almirola up there, Harvick up there, all looked great, but each of those drivers kind of ran into issues at some point or another in this race. Bowyer persevered to get 6th. Tough day for him still in points. He's right there with Erik Jones, with Jimmy Johnson, with Ryan Newman, a few other names, right there on that playoff bubble. It's going to go down to the wire, I think, and Bowyer, man, they've struggled recently. Hopefully they can turn things around. Logano ended up fading to 7th on that final restart. Daniel Suarez ends up finishing 8th. He was the pole sitter for this race, led the first 49 laps, but on the first caution, his team opted for 4 tires, whereas none of the leaders did that. So Suarez lost all his track position and he just never got it back. He lost all that track position, couldn't gain it back, and then sped on pit road, put him further in a hole. The fact that he came back for a top 10 is quite remarkable. It just shows you how good that 41 car was. If they hadn't made that just questionable pit call, and I pointed it out immediately. I tweeted immediately how I thought that was just a terrible call, and I knew they weren't going to come back from it, and they didn't. The fact that they got back into the top 10, honestly, is better than I thought they'd do. So I'll give them some credit for that, but just goes to show you that car was good enough to maybe contend for the win if they hadn't messed with tire strategy as the way they did. Suarez, another driver who actually finds himself outside the top 16 in points after tonight's race. So that's what I'm saying. Things are crucial right now for that team, getting stage points, all that stuff. Bad pit calls like that can really come back to hurt you. Newman a top 10, Chris Buescher a top 10. He loves this package, man. Chris Buescher, on these mile and a half this year, has been consistently in that top 15. Top 10 tonight, great for him. Paul Menard, some rumors going around about him this week. I don't know about his future, but Ricky Stenhouse Jr., top 12, good for Roush tonight. Blaney had a quiet day. You got Almirola up there, some Hendrick cars. I want to talk about William Byron there finishing 18th, because that was the controversy in stage 3 that involved Clint Bowyer I wanted to talk about. Can't show you guys the exact replay, or else NBC will come for my throat, but on a restart in stage 3, Clint Bowyer was the leader, the control car in the outside lane. William Byron was to his inside, and NASCAR ruled that William Byron jumped the start, forced him to commit a pass-through penalty under green, and that really ended his promising day. Likely it was going to be a top 5 or top 10 for Byron until that penalty. The issue was, when the field gets into the restart zone, by rule, the leader is supposed to be the first car to accelerate. William Byron, the second place car, accelerated beforehand. It was clear as day that Cannot argue. Clint Boyer waited till the very end of the restart zone to finally accelerate, probably seeing that William Byron was trying to jump the start, and so he wanted to kind of sucker the kid there. Byron tried to check up before the start-finish line, but at that point the field behind him had started to go as well. He got run over by Almirola a little bit. I couldn't actually see if he beat Clint Boyer to the line, but I don't think that's what NASCAR was ruling on here. I think the rule, at least the way NBC is interpreting it, says that the leader must be the first car to accelerate when in the restart zone. The whole restart was kind of a jumbled up mess because of this. People were pointing the finger at Boyer. Some people were saying Almirola was pushing William Byron, but ultimately Byron made the mistake of hitting the gas before the leader did. And so I thought the penalty, as tough of a call as it was fair. So just want to get my opinion out there. People are going to say NASCAR's got too many rules, but I mean, this is a pretty easy one to follow. Just don't hit the gas before the leader and you're good. 99.9% of these restarts don't have that problem. Rough day for Hendrick. None of their cars were ever really in contention. Johnson spun out and got some damage, so bad points day for the Hendrick cars. Just a rough all around. You know, it's kind of tricky after, Alex Bowman got that win a couple weeks ago, and then they ran so well last week, had a couple cars finish in the top 5 at Daytona. Hendrick Motorsports still kind of inconsistent. That's concerning. Other notables, Austin Dillon ran pretty well early on, but ended up with I think he had a technical issue, ended up costing him a good finish. He finished 35th. Harvick also finished 22nd, so tough break for some bigger names. Bubba Wallace was 23rd, despite bringing out that final caution. Crazy day overall. Didn't expect that from Kentucky. So now let's talk about this race really quick. Let's talk about the aero package, then I'll put this thing on the groovy gauge. The package did not have as big of an effect on Kentucky as I thought it would. I thought it maybe would have a slightly more noticeable effect. Restarts were crazy, and we could still see how side drafting and everything came into play. Dirty air and clean air was still a factor, but more or less, if you just look at just the eye test, this looked like a typical Kentucky race. Hard to pass, field could get pretty strung out, that kind of thing. However, restarts were more entertaining, which has basically been, the MO of this package. Every single race, the restarts are more entertaining, 3, 4, 5 wide sometimes. This is one of those races where I can't really say the package helped Kentucky, but I definitely can't say it hurt Kentucky. Some people will say it hurt Kentucky significantly. I don't know about that. You can still pass the leader. Passes were still possible throughout the entire field, and that's, Kentucky's always been a tough track to pass on, especially in the Gen 6 era, and especially since they repaved it. So I think this package did a pretty good job. Again, I can't say it made the racing much better, but I definitely think it made restarts more entertaining, and it did not hurt the ability to pass or anything like that, from what I could tell. It was definitely warm out there. I know it was in the 90s during the day. I think it was around 80, maybe high 70s by the time the race actually started. Going into the night, I thought the cooler temperatures would help it kind of feel more like Kansas maybe, but we didn't quite get all the way there. So I thought it was still a pretty good race. The racing was fine. Kentucky is not a great track, but NASCAR managed to make it watchable tonight. I thought tonight's race was watchable. It was an above average race. So I don't know. With that being said, let's go to the groovy gauge. I'll give you guys my final thoughts. Kentucky Speedway. Now, fans love to hate on Kentucky, and maybe for good reason. Kentucky's not that great of a track the last few years, and I can't really think of any great races it's put on. Nothing too memorable. Tonight's finish, easily the most memorable thing that's happened at Kentucky Speedway since the Cup Series started going here in 2011. So I think that deserves some points. I said at the very beginning of the show, strategy was back in play for this one. And it's the kind of strategy I like. Not this BS that we see at like Daytona or road courses with the stages where it's like, should we take the stage points or pit and not take stage points? That's bogus strategy. This race had actual NASCAR strategy. Do we take 0 tires? Are they going to matter? Are 4 tires going to matter? Where are we going to line up on this restart? How's that playing into things? That's the kind of strategy I liked, and it came into play throughout this entire race, so I think that deserves, that was a plus. I enjoyed watching that. Because even in this race, when it kind of got strung out and there wasn't a whole lot of passing going on in the top 5, top 10, we still had the kind of looming presence of tire strategy to keep things somewhat interesting. So ultimately, the great finish, the final restart being outstanding, definitely boosted this race slightly on my scale here, but I'm going to give Kentucky, tonight's race, I'm going to give it a 65% on the groovy gauge. I know that might feel low, because that final finish was outstanding. I was shaking. I'm still kind of shaking, to be quite honest. I had to go outside. I had to blow off some steam after that finish. It was outstanding. But I feel like before that great finish, I would have given this probably around a 50, because it was solid but not amazing. It was enjoyable and different, but not thrilling per se. So I think a 65% is pretty fair. Maybe that's low to some of y'all. Maybe that's high to some of you guys. I have no idea. But I think 65%, it's right around where I put like Texas earlier this year. It's right in that range. It's a little higher than I think I put like Las Vegas or Atlanta. So I think that's pretty fair. But let me know what you guys think. Where would you put this on your groovy gauges? I look forward to reading your responses down in the comments. Thank you guys for watching. That's my show. I'm still kind of feeling it after that finish. That was phenomenal. I hope you guys had fun watching that, because I know I certainly did. Thank you guys for staying up late to watch this, or if you're watching this Sunday afternoon, hope you're having a great Sunday. Hope you have a great rest of your weekend, everyone. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter, you can follow me on Instagram, continue the conversation over there. Big thank you to my Patreon supporters: Michael Harrison at G Was of the Stars, Mentally Defective, Cameron James, John Koblenz, Jason R. Long, Wesley Donaldson, Isaac Dennison, Mika Suzuki, iFantasyRace.com, TheRacingInsiders.com, Jeremy Conkling, Joey DiMicino, Emilio Garcia, and the rest of these incredible Patreon supporters. I couldn't do this without the support I get from all of you guys, and I greatly appreciate it. Thanks to you awesome Patreon supporters, I'm able to go to local short track events. I was up in Wisconsin earlier this week for the Slinger Nationals. If you missed my couple videos I posted the last couple days, my experience there, it was awesome. Matt Kenseth was racing it, made his triumphant return to stock car racing. It was a ton of fun. I hope you enjoyed that video, because that was a super fun experience, and I couldn't get to go do those awesome things and document them for you guys without the support I get on Patreon. So thank you guys so much for that. Hope you enjoyed this episode. I know things still kind of different. This summer's a little wild and crazy, but before too long, Out of the Groove will be back to looking like its normal Out of the Groove self, I hope. But hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you again very, very soon. Got a lot of news to catch up on this week. Bye-bye, y'all.